On Christmas morning, the front door was locked from the inside. I rang twice. No one answered. But I could see the table was already set, for everyone but me. Christmas morning air bit at my cheeks as I stepped onto the porch of my son's house, cradling a tin of gingerbread cookies in my arms. I had spent the night at Rose Hill Home, visiting my old roommate Marjorie, who never had visitors anymore. I left early, before sunrise, because I wanted to surprise my granddaughter Emma. The cookies were still warm. I had even tied a little red ribbon around the tin. I rang the bell once, then twice. No answer. But I could see them. Through the frosted glass by the door, I caught glimpses of movement, shadows, colors, and then, clear as day, the dining room. The table was already set. Candles flickered, silverware shimmered, plates stacked high. Laughter floated through the walls. Wine glasses clinked together. I pressed my face closer to the door. Emma's little chair was at the table. I could see her blue sweater. Her hair was braided, just like I used to do it. But there was no place set for me. I knocked again, this time louder. Footsteps approached. The door cracked open with a jolt. Sabrina stood there, arms crossed over her red cashmere cardigan, her lipstick too bright for morning, her voice sharper than the cold wind. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. I tried to smile. "I thought I'd surprise you. I brought Emma the cookies she likes, the ones with cinnamon and molasses." Sabrina rolled her eyes. "I told you yesterday, today's just for immediate family." "I am family," I said gently, raising the tin just slightly. My hands trembled. Before she could speak, Brad appeared behind her. My son. My only child. He looked tired or maybe annoyed. His voice was flat, impatient. "Mama, we talked about this. You said you were staying over at that place. You can't just show up unannounced." "I came back early," I said. "I missed you all." His tone changed, dropped, turned into something ugly. "You missed us? After all the times we've had to clean up your pills, your whining, your doctor's bills? You're lucky Sabrina even agreed to take you in after the nursing home, and now you think you can just walk in here and ruin Christmas?" I swallowed hard. "I do not want to ruin anything. Brad cut me off. "Go back to your room. Or better yet, back to that place. Don't stand here embarrassing yourself. And us. You look like one of those sad old ghosts outside department stores." Sabrina added, "She probably just wants to sit at the table so someone can pity her." I stood there, silent. The tin of cookies felt heavy. So did my chest. Then I nodded. "Of course," I said softly. "I understand." I turned away. I did not cry. I would not give them that. The hallway smelled of pine and roasted ham, but none of it felt warm. I walked slowly past the living room, past the gifts stacked neatly under the tree that I had helped decorate. My picture was no longer on the mantel. It had been replaced by a porcelain angel holding a golden harp. At the back of the house, just past the laundry room, was the place they called my space. It was not a room. It was a storage closet that used to hold holiday decorations and cleaning supplies. They had cleared a path between the boxes and laid down a cot. No window. Just a dangling light bulb and a pile of old blankets. That was where they kept me. I closed the door behind me, the cookies still in my hand. My legs buckled slightly as I sat down on the edge of the cot. I listened. The sound of music filtered through the walls, Frank Sinatra's voice crooning "Let It Snow." Laughter erupted from the dining room. A cork popped. Someone shouted, "Merry Christmas!" And all I could think was how small this space felt, when the world outside was so wide and full of life. I opened the tin, took out one cookie and placed it on a napkin. "For Emma, just in case." I stared at the phone beside my cot. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but there was only one person I wanted to hear from. Maya, my granddaughter from my late husband's side. She was not real family to Brad and Sabrina, but to me, she was everything. I had not told them I installed a small camera in this room. Brad had gifted it to me last year, so I could check in on Marjorie at the nursing home. They never asked for it back. They forgot it existed, but I remembered. And I had connected it to an old app, one that still linked to Maya's account. Earlier that week I had begun sending her clips. Nothing dramatic, just my daily routine. But last night I recorded the moment Sabrina threatened to take my medication away because I coughed too loud during her call. Now I sat there, cookie untouched, fingers shaking, not from cold but from something deeper. Anger. Not rage, but something more ancient. A flame. A line. I turned the camera back on. I leaned close and whispered, "Merry Christmas, darlin'. If you can hear me, I think it is time." Then I pressed send. And waited. Outside the storage door, laughter turned to silence. Someone mentioned Grace. Someone else raised a glass. And I sat alone, holding a cookie in one hand and my name in the other, because I knew, whatever happened next, I would not knock again. The closet was dark again, but not silent. My breath came slower now, steadier, as I reached for the only real light I had left, my old phone. It was scratched and slow, but it still worked. I opened the app, the screen flickered to life, and there she was, Maya, my granddaughter. My girl. "Grandma!" Her voice came through like warm water in winter. I leaned close to the camera. "Yes, sweetheart, I need you to see something." I tilted the phone upward, letting her glimpse the narrow walls, the hanging bulb, the folded cot with my knees pressed together on it. I turned the camera toward the door, the bolt still drawn tight from the outside. "This is where I live now," I said quietly. "They say I'm safer here. They say I should be grateful." Maya didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, "They locked you in?" "Only when company comes over," I replied, "so I don't ruin the atmosphere." I heard her breath catch. "I'm calling Dad, right now." "No," I stopped her gently. "Don't call Brad, he'll only make it worse." She knew better than to argue, she always had. "I need you to listen carefully. There's a box under my cot, wooden, with a blue ribbon. I kept it for years. It has the handwritten will your grandfather left. And your baby blanket." "Mine?" she whispered. "You used to cling to it every night when your parents left you with us. You called it your cloud. I kept it because it still smelled like baby powder and you." I paused, eyes stinging. "I think it's time to use what's in the box." She nodded slowly through the screen. "What do you need me to do?" Before I could answer, I heard footsteps. Then the lock on the door clicked loudly. I hurried to turn the phone screen off and slid it under the thin pillow. The door opened. Brad walked in. No knock, just stormed in like I was some squatter. Behind him was Sabrina. Red wine in one hand, a manila envelope in the other. Sabrina's voice was all sugar and vinegar. "Hope you're ready to do something useful today." I stood. My knees creaked louder than I'd like, but I didn't let them see me wobble. Brad tossed a pen onto the cot. "Sign the papers." "What are they?" I asked. "Transfer of property," Sabrina answered. "It's just legal cleanup. Since you've already said you don't need the house or the land, this makes it official." "I never said that." "Implied," Brad shrugged. "Look, Mom, it's just easier this way, less tax crap. You don't want to die and leave us in probate hell, do you?" Sabrina stepped forward, sipping her wine like she was on a patio. "And before you think of being stubborn, just remember, if you sign, maybe you get moved into a real room again. If not, well, the shed's got a lock too." I stared at them. "You're threatening to put your mother in the shed." "You're threatening to ruin our lives," Brad snapped. "Sign the damn papers, or don't complain when you're cold tonight." I didn't move. I looked at them both, really looked. Brad used to have soft eyes when he was little. He would climb into my lap after nightmares and hold my hands like they were treasure maps. Now his eyes were hard, full of dust, full of debt. "I'll think about it," I said finally, folding the papers without touching the pen. Sabrina raised an eyebrow. "Think fast, because I'm not waiting another week while you get sentimental." They left without another word. The lock clicked again. Once I was alone, I pulled out my phone. Maya was still watching. "You saw it?" I whispered. "I recorded everything," she said. "I'm going to a lawyer," I nodded. "Start with the will. Grandpa left the house in my name, yes, but more than that, he wrote why." Maya was already typing. "Do you still have the recording of them locking you in?" "All of them." "And the threats?" "I do." She hesitated. "You don't want me to go to the police yet, do you?" "No," I said, voice calm but firm. "Not yet." "Then what?" "We wait until they ask again. They will." That night, I didn't sleep. Not from fear, from memory. I lay in the dark with the wooden box pressed against my chest, fingers tracing the folded edge of that baby blanket. The smell was faint now, like the last ghost of spring in winter. But it was there. Maya was the last person who ever hugged me, because she wanted to, not because someone told her to. She was love that didn't ask to be earned. And now, I would show her that love could fight back. Because sometimes, the strongest move a woman can make is not signing something, but refusing, and waiting to be heard. The room was too warm, lit with golden string lights and fake cheer. I could smell the cinnamon potpourri they'd put out for the guests earlier, now just masking the scent of tension. My feet shuffled on the rug as they pulled me forward, Brad on one side, Sabrina on the other. They didn't bother hiding it anymore. There was no, "Mom, can we talk?" No performance, just power. Sabrina dropped a thick envelope onto the table beside the untouched fruitcake. Her voice sliced through the quiet. "The only Christmas gift I want is your signature, Nora." She smiled. Not politely, not kindly. "And if I don't get it," she added, "then no blanket tonight. And no pills either. I'll just forget." "Oops." I blinked at her. My joints were already aching from the cold. My pills, blood pressure, cholesterol, sleep were lined up on a little tray in the kitchen. Locked. She had the key. Brad leaned closer, resting his hands on the back of the leather chair, voice lowered like he was negotiating a car sale. "Mom, what are we doing here? You're 74. You want to drag this out over another 5 years? Why?" I stayed quiet. He glanced at Sabrina, then looked back at me with that same tone, half pity, half push. "I'll take you back to the nursing home right after New Year's. You won't have to see us again, okay? Just sign and it's done." I stared at him. There was a time, God help me, that I would have done anything to make my son's life easier. I sewed his costumes when we couldn't afford them. I worked night shifts when his college tuition went up. I stayed with him when he cried over his first broken heart. Now here he was, offering to trade a signature for a blanket. "You're asking me to sign away my husband's house," I said softly, "the house he built, the house where I gave birth to you." Sabrina scoffed. "We're not asking. We're offering a warm bed instead of a cold floor." Brad crossed his arms. "You're the one making this ugly, Mom." I looked at him, then at her, and for a moment, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt sharp. "You want a Christmas gift?" I said, my voice low and steady. They both stopped. "Then here it is." I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen and held it up to face them. "It's already been sent. To my attorney. And to Maya." Sabrina narrowed her eyes. "Sent what?" I stared at her. "The video. Of you locking me in. Of you threatening me. Of you taking my pills and laughing about it. It's all there." Brad's hand slammed the table. "You're bluffing." I didn't blink. "Am I?" There was a beat of silence. Then Sabrina lunged forward. "Give me the phone." I stepped back. "Touch me," I said, "and I promise by the time Maya lands, the police will already have a copy too." Her hand froze mid-air. "She's coming here?" Brad asked, panic creeping in. "Why?" "Because she remembers what it's like to be held when she cries, and she knows how to hold back when she's angry, unlike some people." "You think she's going to save you?" Sabrina spat. "She's a kid with a job in another state. She doesn't even have a lawyer." I smiled, just a little. "She does now. His name is Michael Chan, probate and elder law specialist." Sabrina looked at Brad. "What the hell is happening?" Brad paced, hand on his forehead. "You're making a mess, Mom." "For what?" "A few more years in this place." "No," I said, "for a few more nights where I can sleep without being afraid." Their faces twisted, first in confusion, then in fury. "You want to burn this family down?" Sabrina said. "Fine, just don't expect anything when you're alone in a state-run facility and no one visits." "I've been alone," I replied, voice barely a whisper. "This is just quieter." Brad let out a bitter laugh. "So what, you're the martyr now? You'll win a lawsuit and die alone with a cat?" "No," I said. "I'll win back my name and my dignity, and maybe I'll help others do the same." He stared at me, jaw tightening. Sabrina turned away, muttering curses under her breath. I didn't flinch, and for the first time in years, I didn't apologize. I walked myself back to the closet and shut the door behind me, not because I had to, but because I chose to. On the other side of the lock they began arguing, loudly, panicked, but I wasn't listening anymore. I had done enough of that. Now it was their turn. To listen. To fear. To wonder what Mayo would say when she walked through the front door. Because this year, Christmas didn't belong to the people who shouted. It belonged to the woman who finally whispered no, and meant it. It was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Not the peace of Christmas morning, the uneasy silence of people who had something to hide. I was sitting in the little storage room, wrapped in the old quilt I'd smuggled from the nursing home, when I heard tires crunching over the frosted driveway. Not hurried, deliberate. Then came the knock. Sharp, polite, confident. 3 times. I heard Sabrina's footsteps first, heels clicking fast down the hall, then stopping short. Then Brad's voice, low and irritated. "Don't answer it. It's probably just the neighbors." But the knock came again, and this time there was a voice. "This is Maya Walker. I believe my grandmother lives here." The silence that followed was the most delicious sound I had heard in months. I opened the storage room door just a crack, just enough to hear Brad mutter a curse under his breath and swing open the front door like a man who still thought he had control. Maya stepped in. She looked older than I remembered, but in the best way, stronger. Her hair was pulled back in a braid, her coat simple, her boots still wet with snow, and behind her stood a man in a dark suit and a tan trench coat, holding a briefcase. "Who the hell is this?" Sabrina snapped, already marching in. "This is my lawyer," Maya said calmly. "Mr. Conway, probate and elder abuse. He's been reviewing footage since 3 a.m. Sabrina crossed her arms, the way she always did when she was about to lie. "That's not legal. You can't just walk in here. This is Brad's house." Maya turned to her, standing tall and unflinching. "I'm not here to take a house," she said. "I'm here to return a name." She walked past them without flinching, through the hallway and toward the living room, where the fireplace still glowed faintly. There, above the mantel, hung the old plaque Brad had refused to remove, even when he stripped the house of everything else that mattered. Walker Residence, 1973. The name of my husband. The name they used to demand money from me, to justify locking me in a room like an attic secret. Maya turned to me then, and I saw it. The same eyes I used to rock to sleep when her mother went back to school. The same little girl who cried when I'd burned her cookies and hugged me anyway. She stepped forward, reaching into her coat pocket, and then she held it out, the paper. The one Sabrina had forged, printed from her home office, forced into my shaking hands. Demanded I sign. The fake power of attorney that said I was of sound mind and still gave it all away. Maya looked at it. Then she tore it down the middle, slow and deliberate, her eyes never leaving mine. "I remember you, Grandma," she whispered. "I remember your real signature. The way you taught me to make the loops neat. This isn't it." I started crying before I realized it, but not because I was hurt, because I was known. Brad tried to recover, his voice rising. "You can't do this. That's my father's house. You don't even live here." Mr. Conway finally spoke, calm as ever. "This home, according to county records, was left in a living trust to Mrs. Nora Walker with survivorship rights. Attempting to coerce a transfer under threat of neglect constitutes felony elder abuse in the state of Colorado." Sabrina paled. "We didn't hurt her." Maya stepped between them. "You hurt her every day," she said, "when you locked her in that room, when you treated her like a burden instead of the woman who raised a son and buried a husband." She looked back at me, her voice softer now. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to remind you that this house wasn't built by cruelty. It was built by love. And no one who uses hate to decorate it deserves to keep the keys," Brad sputtered, looking to Sabrina, who had no more words, just a face full of fear. I stood, my knees trembling but heart steady, and walked over to Maya. Her arms opened without hesitation, and I fell into them like I had been falling for years, but finally someone had caught me. "I missed you," I said. "I never left you," she whispered. "I just didn't know how bad it was." "But I do now." Then she pulled something else from her coat, a small baby blanket, soft and yellowed with time. The one I'd kept in a cedar box, the one I used to wrap her in when her mother dropped her off in the morning. "You kept it?" I asked. She smiled. Of course, I'm not like them. No, she was nothing like them. She was the last heir not just of a name, but of decency, of memory, of love. And finally, I wasn't alone anymore, not in this house, not in this fight, and never again in this life. They called it the people versus Bradley and Sabrina Walker, but to me, it felt more like the world versus forgetting. The courtroom wasn't grand like in the movies, just 4 cream-colored walls, a wooden bench for the judge, and a cross above her head that caught the winter light like something sacred. Still, the silence in that room had weight. Maya sat beside me, holding my hand. Her grip was steady, warm, and real, like a lighthouse you could feel through the fog. The prosecutor stood first. "Your Honor," she began, "this is not a case about inheritance or family disputes. This is about dignity. This is about a woman who was locked away in a storage room during Christmas, in her own home." Brad sat across from us in a stiff gray suit, pretending not to sweat. Sabrina wore a tight black turtleneck and didn't make eye contact with anyone. But the room began to shift the moment the screen lit up. "Please direct your attention to Exhibit A," the prosecutor said, and then came the video. From the grainy lens of the baby monitor I had hidden in the shelf, the whole world watched. First, Brad bursting into the room, voice raised. "You sign this or you can rot in that room for all I care." The courtroom gasped as the next part played. Brad sweeping a bottle of pills off the nightstand with the back of his hand, sending them skidding across the floor. I could hear my own voice in the background, too calm to be safe. "Please, I need that for my blood pressure." Then Sabrina, arms crossed in the hallway, blocking the kitchen. "You already had dinner yesterday," she said. "We don't need a second stomach eating leftovers. That food's for the kids." More footage followed. Clips Maya had compiled with date stamps, audio enhancements, everything. There was Brad laughing to a friend on the phone. "She thinks we brought her home out of love. Hell, it's cheaper than a nursing home." And Sabrina smirking as she turned the key to the storage room. "Sleep tight, Grandma Dust." The jury looked sick. One woman dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. But Maya's hand tightened around mine, a silent message. "We are seen now." Then came the defense. Sabrina stood and hissed. "She's old. She forgets things. We were doing our best. This is all an act." The judge banged her gavel. "This court will not tolerate gaslighting the victim." Brad's attorney tried next, claiming Mr. Walker was under emotional strain, supporting an elderly parent in the home without training or financial aid. But the judge wasn't fooled. "Financial strain does not justify abuse," she said, voice like steel under silk. "And locking someone in a dark closet is not a caregiving method." Then it was Maya's turn to speak. She stood, looked directly at the judge, and said, "My grandmother isn't forgetful. She's the one who taught me to read. She's the one who nursed me through flu when my mom had double shifts. If anything, we're the ones who forgot her." Silence followed. Even Brad didn't dare look up. The judge took her time before speaking. Then she read the ruling aloud. "Bradley Walker and Sabrina Walker, you are hereby convicted of the following charges: elder abuse, forgery of legal documents, attempted financial exploitation of a dependent adult." Her voice never wavered. "You are to serve a combined sentence of 12 months under house arrest with court-mandated counseling and community service in elderly care. You are permanently barred from all contact with Nora Walker. Any violation will result in imprisonment." Brad slumped. Sabrina's jaw clenched so tight I thought it might shatter. But the judge wasn't done. "To Mrs. Nora Walker," she said, turning to me, "this court offers not just legal protection, but recognition. What was done to you was cruel. It was not your fault, and it will not be ignored." That was the moment I cried. Not because I was broken, because I was believed. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited with their cameras and notepads. "Mrs. Walker, how does it feel to get justice on Christmas?" I held Maya's hand tighter and said, "Justice feels like being invited to your own family again." We didn't go back to the house. We never even looked at it again. That evening, Maya took me to her apartment, where a small tree blinked in the corner, and a single plate sat waiting for me at the table, with my name in gold marker on a card. A real place at the table. Finally. The courtroom doors opened with a groan behind me. Cold air rushed in, biting at my cheeks, but it felt cleaner than the air I'd been breathing for years. I didn't walk out alone. Maya was by my side. Her arm looped through mine like it had been there all my life. Her steps matched mine. Slow, deliberate, steady. The crowd outside was already buzzing. Microphones, cameras, shouted questions, flashes. I wasn't prepared for all of it, but I also wasn't afraid of it anymore. A reporter leaned forward, shoving a recorder toward my mouth. "Miss Walker, do you have anything to say after today's verdict?" I paused. Then I looked directly into the nearest camera, the lens cold and glinting, and I said, "I lost a son today, but I didn't lose myself." There was a silence, and even the cameras seemed to stop clicking for a second. I didn't lose my mind. I didn't lose my heart. I still have both, and I intend to use them, not just for me, but for anyone out there who's ever been locked away, called a burden, or told their life no longer matters. I heard Maya exhale beside me. She wasn't crying. She didn't need to. Her grip on me was enough. That night, I sat beside her on the couch while she uploaded the entire courtroom footage and video clips I had recorded. She added a simple title, "Christmas Shouldn't Hurt. Nora's Story." She posted it to every platform that would take it, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, even Reddit. It spread faster than I could have ever imagined. Thousands of comments came in. My grandma went through the same thing. I thought I was the only one. "Thank you, Nora, for speaking up." It stunned me how many of us there were. The next morning, I received a call from a social worker in Ohio, then another from a nonprofit in Oregon. An elderly woman from Florida wrote me a letter by hand and sent it overnight. They call me forgetful too, but I remember who I was. Thank you for reminding me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. Not in a fake Hallmark card way, but truly, deeply seen. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to let this just be a sad story with a courtroom ending. I wasn't going to sit quietly in Maya's guest room, sipping tea and knitting scarves while time ticked by. I'd been silent too long. I called a woman named Judith, who ran a community legal aid center. Then a man named Raul, who worked with elder housing rights. I gathered Maya and a few of her friends, young, driven people who didn't look at us old folks like worn-out furniture, and together we did something that made my heart beat faster than anything I'd felt in years. We started a project, a sanctuary, a real place Christmas shouldn't hurt, a shelter for the forgotten. We rented an old house on the edge of town, nothing fancy, just 5 rooms, soft beds, hot meals, and ears that listened. We painted the walls with warm colors, hung family photos, not of us, but of the residents, of who they used to be and who they still were. One woman, Janice, came in after being kicked out by her own daughter. She'd been living in a car with her dog. Another, Mr. Huang, hadn't spoken in months after his son dumped him in a home and never came back. Slowly, gently, we helped each other thaw out. And at night, when the lights dimmed and the fireplace cracked, we told our stories, not out of pity, but out of pride. I never saw Brad again. I suppose he's out there somewhere, angry and ashamed, maybe not even sorry, but that's okay, because I've learned something Maya once whispered to me, back when I felt like a ghost in a storage room. Sometimes, we don't lose people, they just lose the right to be close to us. That stuck with me. So now, when people ask me if I'm sad about losing my son, I tell them this. Yes, I'm sad, but sadness isn't weakness, and it's not the same as defeat. Because in losing him, I found my voice. I found Maya. I found purpose. And I found every forgotten grandmother and grandfather who needed someone to say, "You still matter. You always did." This Christmas, I didn't put up a tree or hang lights. I put out 6 extra chairs at dinner. All of them were filled. 1 year later, I stood in a house that was never meant to exist. It didn't smell like antiseptic or soup from a can. It smelled like cinnamon and wood polish. It didn't echo with television sets blaring at full volume or nurses shouting down hallways. It echoed with laughter, real, deep belly laughter, the kind that only happens when someone remembers they still belong. We called it Christmas Shouldn't Hurt. That name wasn't chosen for drama, it was the truth. For far too many of us, holidays came with locked doors, silent rooms, and the ache of being politely forgotten. Now, it was a shelter, a home, a place for anyone over 60 who had been told, "We don't have space for you anymore," or "You're better off somewhere else." Place for those called burdens. Moochers. Waste of space. We gave them back their names. We gave them their mail, their own keys, their photos on the fridge. We gave them their story. Maya and I ran the place together. She took care of logistics, advocacy, the website, the young volunteers. I ran the front porch, the kettle, and the listening chair by the fireplace. Every soul who walked through our door had something in common. They had been made to feel invisible. They came with bruises, not just on skin but on memory, confidence, trust. Some, like Mr. Leon, had been dumped at shelters by their own grandchildren. Others, like Miss Patty, had been forced to sign over their pensions in exchange for a fold-out couch. We never asked too many questions. We just gave them warmth and options. Because one of the most dangerous lies people like us are told is that we have no options. One of the first things we hung in the house was a wooden frame, placed right at eye level in the main hall. Inside was a piece of old paper, the edges fragile, stained by years and time. It was the last note my husband ever wrote to me. He had hidden it in his desk drawer, beneath a stack of insurance documents and war medals. I only found it after he passed. I had read it again the night I was locked in the storage room, and again after the trial ended. Now it lived here. It read, "If you're reading this, it means you were stronger than they thought, and I knew you would be. I know you'll keep speaking, especially when they try to tell you you're just a burden." Sometimes I would stand in front of that frame and whisper, "I didn't stay silent, Charles, not even when it cost me everything, because I had gained something greater." Not long after the shelter opened, we began receiving letters, donations, calls from other cities. A woman in Wisconsin opened her own branch of Christmas Shouldn't Hurt. A retired judge in Vermont offered to fund legal defense for seniors fighting coercion. A teenager in Texas ran a fundraiser and wrote us a note that read, "You helped my Nana leave a house that didn't love her." Each story hit me like waves. But they didn't drown me. They lifted me. That December, as snow fell soft outside our window and the fireplace flickered low, we held our first community dinner. No suits, no speeches, just a long wooden table, mismatched chairs, and real food, not just for nourishment, but for dignity. Maya baked pies. I made the gingerbread cookies. Just like I had that Christmas, I was locked out, left to knock on a door that would never open for me. Except now, I didn't need their door, I had built my own. One of our residents, Miss Eloise, raised her glass that night and said something I'll never forget. Growing old doesn't mean disappearing. It means arriving, finally. We clinked our glasses, and I looked around the table, at the faces once discarded, now radiant under soft candlelight. At Maya, whose hands had lifted me out of darkness. At myself, no longer a ghost in a storage room, but a voice with a place and a purpose. This wasn't revenge. It was redemption. And in a world that's always trying to move past people like me, I had made something impossible to ignore. I don't know how many more Christmases I have left, but I know this, none of them will hurt. Not anymore. It was Christmas Eve again, but this year the cold felt different. Crisp, but not cruel. Like a memory you had finally made peace with. Maya was in the kitchen, laughing with a group of young volunteers as they chopped carrots and argued over the right way to roast sweet potatoes. They had driven through snow and sleet from 3 different counties just to be here tonight. I stepped into the dining hall, our dining hall, where 12 chairs were neatly lined around a long oak table. Each seat had a name card, each plate had silverware, folded napkins, and a sprig of rosemary for no reason other than that it was beautiful. I looked around and took it all in. Mrs. Eloise was humming carols in her wheelchair, while a boy in a Santa hat painted her nails. Mr. Leon was setting down pitchers of cider, and every time someone tried to help, he waved them off with a grin. My hands may shake, but my memory still knows where the apple juice goes. There was no tension, no biting words, no locked doors, and absolutely no one sitting alone. When Maya stepped into the room carrying 2 trays of stuffing, I called out with a smile, "This year the table is full, and no one's left in the dark." She beamed at me, eyes gleaming with the same fire I once saw in her mother, God rest her soul, and came to kiss my cheek. We sat down to eat, all of us. No head of the table, no hierarchy, just a family built not from obligation, but from choice. The fireplace flickered low. Carols played softly on the old radio. The tree in the corner sparkled with mismatched ornaments donated by our residents, each one a story, a scar, a survival. And above the door hung a wooden sign, freshly carved and stained by one of the volunteers from town. It read, "Inheritance can be divided, but dignity cannot." I stared at that sign longer than I should have. The words hit me like a truth I had always known but never said aloud, because I had lost things, property, family. Silence had cost me almost everything once, but what I had gained could never be taken away. That night, before I went to bed, I stood outside for a moment. The snow was falling, soft and slow, like feathers from a tired sky. I could hear laughter still bubbling through the windows, the clink of mugs, someone trying to play Jingle Bells on an out-of-tune piano. And I whispered a thank you. Not to anyone in particular, just to life. To the second chance I didn't know I had. To the quiet war I had fought and won. I no longer needed to prove myself. I no longer needed to be let in. I had built the door, and now I held the key. If you've ever been told you're too old, too much trouble, or simply in the way, remember, Nora's story isn't just meant to be told, it's meant to light a truth. You deserve love, dignity, and respect, right to your very last breath. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories and help us share the voices that should never be silenced.